Okay, so again, we're finishing 2-5 today. My other class had a fair amount of time to work on homework, so I hope that you guys do as well. So we just have 5 questions to go over. They're all the same directions, and you can probably do all of them alone. I'm just helping review. For the quiz that's happening on Thursday for you guys tomorrow for Alpha, the only thing for 2-3 that you need to know are these writing the equations of like a polynomial function with multiplicity. So I could have one like this. That's fair game. So I'm looking at like number 4 on 2.3. That's fair game for the quiz. That's really all in 2.3. The rest is 2.4, 2.5. In 2.4, remember we started by doing long division and synthetic division. I'd be prepared to do both of those. I didn't ask a specific remainder question, but then I did ask questions about finding all the zeros. So if you notice, there's like 3 problems right here about finding zeros. That's fair game. And then we're going to do a bunch today that are more finding zeros. So if you go to 2.5, number 1, like we do, that's more finding zeros. So the method that we're doing today, you're going to have a couple problems like that on your quiz, as well as like number 3, we did one like it last week, and then the rest of it. You will also have one problem, just like the multiplicity problem, writing the polynomial equation. You'll have one that has an I in it, like this guy right here. Number 2A on 2.5 is a good one to know how to do. I will make sure all my videos are up to date before I leave school today. I haven't had prep yet today, so during my prep next period, I will make sure this video goes on Canvas, and I'll make sure all the other ones are on Canvas. So there's not very many problems on the quiz, but if you notice these problems that we have to do today, there's a lot of process to it. So we got to make sure that we know how to do the whole process, which is why I wanted to do 5 of the exact same type of problem today. So it's like, first we try this, then we try this, then we do this, then we do this, and then we go back to the beginning, etc., etc. Okay, everyone feel okay about what to expect for the quiz? Okay. We are going to meet up at 2.5, and we're just going to start on number 1. We'll do 1, A, B, and C, and then there are just 2 more problems for number 3 that we haven't hit yet, okay? Now, when it says find all the zeros, we had 3 or 4 steps that we had to do. Do you remember your little steps? And that might be on a different piece of paper that you have. What are the steps when we are finding all the zeros? I told you to start by trying what?
Factor.
Good. So first thing we do is we try to factor or we try to quadratic formula. Don't forget that's the first thing we're going to try. Nothing is worse than it just being a very simple factoring problem and you do your PRR and you do all these things and you plug it in and you do all this stuff and it was just a factorable problem. If you can't factor it, what do we try next?
PRRs.
PRRs, good. And when we do our PRRs, how do we decide if it's good or not? If it equals 0, so we have to plug in and we want it to equal 0. And then once we find out that it does equal 0, once we find a factor that works, then what do we do? Synthetic division. And then once I've done synthetic division and I've got another expression, what do I do? Back to the beginning. Try again. So the 5 rounds we're doing today are this pattern. We've done a bunch of problems doing this kind of pattern. Again, it's not hard. There's just a lot of steps. Okay. Now, the first one, the 3 that I gave you up here, I actually gave you a 0. So you don't need to factor a quadratic formula. You don't need to PRR or plug in because I already gave you one. So we're going to start right at synthetic division for these 3 on the front page. The first one is a simple, like normal number. I gave you that x equals 2. So we're going to just go immediately to synthetic division, put it in the house, and see what happens once I solve for that. Everybody okay so far? Carry that 1 down. Yeah, Kate. You do the opposite when it's written in factored form. But when it says it equals, you're just going to do exactly what you see. Great question. Carry my 1 down. And remember when we do this, we're taking the number on the bottom and we're multiplying it by the number in the house. So 2 times 1 is 2, so I get -4. Then we'll do -4 times 2 and get -8. Gives me 3. And I do 2 times 3, which gives me 6. which gives me 0. I told you that that number is a factor. So if you don't get 0 here, I mean this nicely, but that means you messed up, right? It means that you made a mistake somewhere in here if this doesn't equal 0 at the end. So if I already gave you the number, you just double check. Don't go back through your work. Make sure you didn't make a careless mistake. Now I can write this as x squared minus 4x plus 3. What do I do next? Let's try and factor it. Is this factorable? Oh, perfect. And so that means my zeros are what? Good. And don't forget the first one that they gave me, 2. So my zeros are 3 and 1 and 2. Actually, I can go one more step right there. I can show you. Okay, so they gave me that 0. Okay. Now, if you look at the next two, they're not real numbers. They have i's in them. And let's actually skip down to letter C because I think that one's going to be a tiny bit easier, okay? I have to do 4i, but I also have to do its conjugate. Remember when we did the polynomial form? I'm just going to shuffle over to number 2, where we wrote I, and then what else did I write? This.
I minus I plus I.
We did minus I and we did plus I, which is the same thing as having I and negative I. Or you can think of it as plus or minus I. So same thing here is I have 4i, but I also am going to have to do negative 4i. Once we synthetically divide one of them, we're going to get i's in our answer, which would normally make me panic, but I'm like letting you know now we'll do another immediate synthetic division with the other I, and that will cancel all of our i's out, okay? So it's going to be a little uncomfy for a second, but you guys are going to be fine, okay? So I'm going to set up my synthetic division. Notice that I don't have an x to the third, so I have to do 0x to the third, and I also have 0 x's. So as I do my synthetic division, hold your space for those places. 1, 0, 13, 0, negative 48. The reason I wanted to do a normal one first is to show you that it's the exact same process. We're just going to get funky answers, okay? So I bring that 1 down, and again, like I did last time, I'm going to multiply 1 times whatever's in the house. What's 1 times 4i? 4i. Okay? Can you do 0 plus 4i? It's just going to be 4i, right? So bring that 4i down. Now, what's 4i times 4i? 16i squared, and what is 16i squared the same thing as?
Negative 16.
Negative 16. Okay. So if you need to write that out, don't be afraid to write it out. But if you're like, no, I got it, then don't write it out. It's fine. We can do 13 minus 16. That gives us negative 3. And then negative 3 times 4i is negative 12i. And I can combine that with 0 to just be negative 12i. And then we'll end negative 12i times 4i is going to be good. Or positive 48. Good. Which is what we want because we want to get 0. So that's a nice little check-in. I have to get 0 because I was told it was a factor. Now, I don't know where your spacing is at. If you have room, I would just immediately set up a new synthetic division for negative 4i, just right underneath it. If you don't have room, you can rewrite this. It's totally fine. Like I could write negative 4i, 1, 4i, negative 3, negative 12i, and all that stuff. Do I need to worry about that 0 there? It was a remainder before, so you could just kind of cross it out if you just want to make sure that you're not going to get overly confused. Okay. And so now I'm going to do a completely new synthetic division because we have never seen and we never use and we never will x to the third plus 4i x squared minus 3x. Sorry, I'm putting i's everywhere. Minus 12i. Like we would never see that. So that's why I wouldn't even put this in expression form. Just go immediately to your next synthetic division. Okay? Same thing. Carry down that 1. Negative 4i times 1 is negative 4i. Ooh, that cancels, right? That makes 0. Thank God, right? 0 times anything is just 0. So I get that -3 come down. And then -4i times -3 is positive 12i, which gives me 0, which is good. That's my remainder. This now makes my next expression.
Does it matter which, like if you did the -4i first?
That's fine. Joey asked, does it matter which one you do first? If I did 4i first or -4i first, as long as you do them both, it doesn't matter. And now I'm going to get down to an expression, and this is x squared minus 3. Okay. We're back to the beginning of our list of things to try. We try and factor it. We try and quadratic formula. Another thing that I don't normally write, but you could also think of it, is you could just solve this. How would I solve that to get x squared by itself? Add
Plus 3x.
Not quite. We can't factor because 3 is not a perfect square. If it was 9, we would do x plus 3x minus 3. But 3 is not a perfect square, so I have to solve this all the way out. And then remind me, when I do that square root, what else do I need to put in my problem? Plus or minus. And then don't forget the 2 zeros that we already had. You can write 4i and minus 4i, or you can write them all together and write plus or minus 4i. As long as you can show me that we have all of our i's. All of
Why
our
is there an I in the?
That should be a comma. That should be like a semicolon
You.
or comma.
Wait, why?
Oh, that's not.
Why
It's not
is
nine.
Nine.
why is it x squared and not x to the third?
Because we did synthetic division, so this would have been x to the third, and then we did another synthetic division, and that makes that x squared. Why did I not what?
Why don't you use?
It's not one.
I like a semicolon, just personal preference. I guess because we're doing i's, I can see how it's confused, but sometimes if it's a comma, sometimes like if the comma is not done right, sometimes I think it's a 1 or a period. So that's why I do a semicolon, but I can see how with the i's it's a little
Wait,
confusing. Okay. We're going to do the exact same thing on the one above it, but notice the one above it is not 1i or 2i or 4i, it's 1 plus I. So we're going to do 1 plus I in the house, and then what's my other conjugate one going to be?
Minus that?
1 minus I. Hi, Maddie. We found new seats, so you can sit in an empty seat. Probably change it up on you. So we're gonna do 1 plus I and 1 minus I. That's gonna get a little bit messy. Okay, should we go take that one on? The one above it. Okay, here I go. So I've got 1 plus I. And then when I'm done with that one, we'll do 1 minus. I'm going to give myself a little bit more space, like width-wise, than I did on the last one. So I'm going to do 1 plus I will go in my house, and I'll do 1, -2, -1, 6, -6.
Can you do the line division method first?
Technically, yes. I would not. Especially with this plus and minus i's. I think that gets super messy super quick. Great question. Let's carry down that one. Exact same method we did before. We're going to take whatever's in the bottom and multiply by what's in the house. 1 times 1 plus I is just 1 plus I. 1 plus I. And I stacked it in a way so that my numbers go together and then the I is separate off by itself. And I can combine the coefficients. I can combine the constants. -2 plus 1 becomes -1. And then I'll just throw an I next to it. So I've got -1 plus I.
What do we have to do?
Now we're going to FOIL this one out. I know. It's this all of these problems are the same. Like it's not hard, but it's like I have to do this and synthetic division and plug in and do this and PR. Like it's just a lot of those things. So we'll do it off to the side. You're welcome to just watch me, or you can do it on your own as well. So I've got 1 plus I, because that's in the house, times what's underneath, -1 plus I. So that becomes -1 plus I minus I plus I squared. And so the i's cancel, so I get -1, and then what's I squared become?
-1.
-1, and that becomes -2. Those you,
Oh, no, I don't know why are we doing?
because I have to multiply those two together to get that number right there. And that number is about to be -2. So I get -3.
And then would you do -3 plus -3i?
We'll do -3 times 1 plus I, which will be -3 minus 3i. Which can simplify to be 3 minus 3i. And then I just have one more of those kind of annoying problems where I have to do 1 plus I times 3 minus 3i.
Would this be on the quiz?
No,
Are we gonna have to do that again though? For another?
we are, but it's gonna be cleaner because we will have already cleaned a couple things up. So you'll see, because it's gonna cancel out in a second. So now I'll do 1 plus I times 3 minus 3. So the i's cancel again, and I get 3, and then -3i squared becomes +3, right? So 3 plus 3 is 6. Oh, thank God, because that's what we wanted it to be, right? Because -6 plus 6 is 0. Okay. Again, if you have space, I'm just gonna do a synthetic division right underneath it. I'm not gonna rewrite it. You can rewrite it, but if you have the ability to, I'm just gonna squeeze another one in here, and I'm gonna do 1 minus I just directly beneath that. And again, I can ignore the remainder because the remainder's gone. Okay. Carry down that 1, I get 1. And then 1 times 1 minus I is just 1 minus I. But wait, that cancels, right? To get 0. Oh, thank goodness. I don't want any I's in my answer. Okay, well, what's 0 times anything? Not for the rest of them, because now when I get 0, now I get -3. Okay. And then this will cancel, right? Because -3 times 1 is -3. -3 times -I is +3i. And then those will cancel. And I get 0. And then this actually looks just like the one we just did. And I don't know if that was on purpose or on accident, but those just line up the exact same way. This is my new expression, x squared plus 0x minus 3.
So because you do it synthetic twice, you go from x to the 4 to x squared. So if you did it like again,
Then it'd be x.
it should be x. Does it ever do it? Do you ever do it 3 times?
We normally find an easier thing to do than synthetically divide a third time. Because technically you could do synthetic division, but like I have to know what to do here. And it's easier instead of like, oh, we can just solve this. Maggie, question.
Where is the x squared?
Great question. We started with x to the 4th. And then when we divide it, then we get down to x to the 3rd. And then we divide it a second time, and then that becomes x squared. Good questions. And then just like the last one, I can set that equal, and I'm actually gonna do it over here, so I've got a little bit more clean work. Add that 3 to both sides like we just did, square root both sides like we just did, and then we remember that when we square root, we get plus or minus √3. And then the other thing you don't want to forget are the i's that we just did. So 1 plus I and 1 minus I. And those are all my possible zeros for this problem. We've got 2 more problems just like this. And again, like this, you've probably been like, Miss White, we've been doing the same type of problem over and over. Yes, because I hope that the repetition makes it easier, okay? So you have the whole next side filled in. We already did that. Flip it over one more time to get B and C for, I think, number 3. I'm gonna be quiet for a minute and I want you to see what you can do on your own. So see if you can factor a quadratic formula. If you can't, PRR, plug in, synthetic division, back to the beginning. It's the exact same thing. PRRs are the constant, factors of the constant divided by factors of the coefficient. That's just like what it is. So like, what are the factors of 69? Okay, and
Oh, wait, no, 3.
yeah, keep going. 3 works.
It's
3 by
You probably already have this list everywhere, but I'm just gonna keep rewriting it. I'll leave that on the board for a second. I'll jump in with you. I'm not gonna leave you stranded, but see what you can do on your own for a second, or ask a neighbor.
Wait, do I do the minus 69 and then?
Yeah. Okay, so first thing to take is you gotta watch these videos. Here are the list of those numbers divided by those. So. You missed it.
yeah.
I don't know how to help you. Because like, this is all building for each other. So maybe if you'd rather just study that, I don't.
Man,
That's not-
this, but they weren't like. I didn't see.
Yeah, because we didn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to spend.
I know, it's so.
But that probably wasn't important, right? Instead, if you just plug it in, the remainder is also going to plug into the exercise. And so you have two angulars. Okay. Yeah. I will take this out.
I have my set. So after we find the PRRs and get our values, do we plug it in? Do we just plug in or?
Yes.
Or do we do synthetic division?
You'll end up doing synthetic division, but I don't want to do like 4 different small synthetic divisions, so it's easier to plug it in.
So you plug it in and then find your zero.
Find one that
Then
works.
Okay, so synthetic division is just after the PRR.
So it's almost like you just need another step, so it's like you
Yeah.
have to plug in, step 1 to be synthetic.
Because that's what it is right there.
We have a quiz on Thursday. And it's on, 4.
What?
And we'll get that. We're not gonna do a study guide because I don't see you guys tomorrow. We need to get it back. And you, I just talked at the beginning of the video, I don't really didn't. You can just go back and watch it. What we're doing right now, there's like 2 problems like this, there's a problem division, so. We can't divide to any other thing, we must, like this, where we would write our polynomial function. I've got one where you have the minus, and then I have another one that's like farther back. And then,
This white.
Okay,
These, what do I do after this? Oh, quadratic. Yeah, cause I was like, it's not. Yeah, never mind. Yeah.
Are you guys ready for a little check-in? Okay, if you're good, keep moving, but if you're like, ooh, I'm not really sure, let me come check in.
Cause you have to plug 1
You're gonna.
into all the x's and then -1 and then 3 and then -3.
All right, so I looked at factor, there's no way that I can group this and it works out. So instead we do PRRs. So my PRRs is the list of the factors of your constant divided by the factors of the leading coefficient. And it's always a plus or minus. So my numbers that multiply to be 69 are 1 and 69, and then 3 and 23, I think. And then my leading coefficient is just 1. So my PRRs are 1, 3, 23, and 69. Now, those are what we do best. We plug those into my equation for X and we see which one will give me 0. When you get 0, that means it's a factor of this.
You know, when to be on our.
You can, but if you can factor, that's way easier. So always look to factor or quadratic formula first. Let's make it as easy as possible. But if you go to do it and you can't factor it, then I immediately go to PRRs. So I'm going to try 1 and I get 1 minus 10 plus 44 minus 69. And I know that's not going to work. Then we'll try negative 1. I get negative 1 minus 10 minus 44 minus 69. That's not gonna work. Then we'll try 3. I actually think I'm gonna try negative 3.
Oh, you mean that negative.
Is it positive 3 works?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm not gonna try negative 3. I was trying to cheat the system.
So you can use the. Oh,
That's why we have a plus or minus.
Oh,
See, a minute ago, I just tried negative 1.
oh.
So I just started the game. Try 1, try negative 1. Try 2, try negative 2. Whatever the list of those are. Every so often I try and beat the system to do less, but this one, like they alternate between positive and negative. So I think a positive is just as likely to work as a negative. So 3 squared is 27. Sorry, 3 to the third is 27. 3 squared is 9. Times negative 10 is negative 90. 3 times 44 is 132. And then minus 69.
But
Okay.
if it was mostly like, if it was like all subtraction, would you try and take the plug in a negative or positive?
If it's all pluses or all subtractions, if it's all one sign, I try and plug in a negative to try and alternate some signs. This one has good alternating, positive, negative, so a positive is a good bet. And I can plug that in the calculator, but we know that this one works, right? Someone else plugged it in and found it works, right? We did our PRRs, we plugged in to figure out which one works, 3 works, so that means that's now my synthetic division. So I'm gonna put 3 inside the house, and I'm gonna synthetically divide. If you rocked and rolled this one in your board, try the next one. But if you're like, ooh, nope, I'm still hanging on, then hang on, we'll do it together. Here are I plugged in, I synthetically divided with the one that worked out, and then I got this polynomial. I always go back to see if I can factor a quadratic formula. I can't factor this one, but I can definitely quadratic formula that. That's going to be a lot easier than anything else I'm going to try. So A, B, C, X equals 7 plus or minus 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times 23, all over 2 times 1. And I get 7 plus or minus 49 minus 92. 2. Negative 43 over 2. And the only thing I can do to clean that up is take that negative out and make it an I. So 7 plus or minus I root 43 over 2. And then don't forget the 0 that we found from doing synthetic division. I got 3.
Oh, wait, you go back to when you divided, like here. Not to divide, it's sort of like. Oh, you use a quadratic formula.
If you can, which I could.
Do you also use that like negative 2b divided by A?
Negative b divided by 2a is vertex form. That's not super helpful right here. We want to find out what the zeros are. So yes, good idea, not relevant. Any questions?
So that if you get like a complex one after your second division, you can just do the first one.
If you get,
Quadrant. Or do you have?
you've got to use a product of the synthetic division. Okay. Why don't you try the next one? The next one's very similar. Try the next one if you haven't already. If you have, just wait a second. I'll join you back on the board. Try the next one. Let me come see.
This is my. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I did all of them except.
I do think positive numbers.
Is it actually?
It's so perfect.
I'm freaked out. The weird thing is I feel like I didn't go on angle.
I think it works out.
That's the one I didn't do. I'm like 6. It's like getting thousands.
Yeah, you're like this. Something is not right.
You get one PR.
You need one to work.
That's annoying. Wait. I know. Not freaking right. I just did every single one except the one else.
Now, this kind of always leads us to the question, like, what PRR is going to work on a quiz or a test? I like somewhere in the first 4 that you try should work. So like if you're doing this and you're getting to like 6 and you've tried 1, -1, +2, -2, +3, -3, you maybe mess something up. So on a quiz or a test, you shouldn't spend like 10 minutes plugging in for PRRs. If you don't get it in the first 4, I would go back and double check and make sure you did it all right. I will also know what the answer is, so if you're like way off, I'll be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Go back, try again. I'll be like, you did it, just you didn't do one of them right. So that becomes 7 and -7, so that one works. Now this is where we have another problem. You normally go back to the beginning and we try and factor or quadratic formula, right? And normally it works. Did that work this time? So now we have to go to step number 2 again. What do I have to try this time again? PRRs again. Try our PRRs again.
Oh, so it's the same
Well, you
number.
gotta try it again.
Try it again.
Wait, so why do you try?
Because I couldn't factor a quadratic formula this time. Now, we've done a ton of these problems, haven't we? This is the first time that we haven't had it. So it's not common to have to go and do a second PRR, but it is an option. It is a tool that we have. More often than not, the second step will be a factor or a solve or a quadratic formula. Every so often we get here and we can't do that. So I'll PRR again. It's the same list as it was before.
Wait, so that didn't work.
It did work. So 1 is one of our answers. We're going to use 1 later. But we're not done. We have to PRR and see what my answer is from here. So I'll plug it in again. Joey, here's an example where they're all positive. So I know that 1 is probably not going to work. So I'm going to try a negative number and I'm going to hope it's a small one to see if I can get there pretty quickly. So -1, that becomes +1 times 2 is 2 minus 7 plus 6. That's 1 minus 7 is -6 plus 6 is 0.
Is it always gonna be like a plus or minus with PRs?
It will always be plus or minus here. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but like the last like 4 would be better. Trying to think of.
It's not like a shortcut, like it's always -1 or it's always +1. It keeps alternating. But see how we had to get some positives and some negatives in here in order for them to cancel out? That's kind of what I'm looking for. So I didn't plug +1 in because I knew it'd be positive, 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 and there's no way that that would equal 0.
Isn't gonna be on that quiz? I mean, it's a.
Yeah, these types of preps are on the test and the quiz. Are you probably gonna have to do 2 PRRs? Probably not. But that is an option. Also, alpha period watched me struggle through this. I wrote -6 when I went to like copy it down. Make sure you're super careful about positives, negatives as you recopy things. There's just a lot of room to miss something, so don't lose that. Because I spent like 10 minutes trying to find a PRR that worked, and finally someone was like, "Miss White, you lost your negative or you lost your positive," and I was like, "Oh man, that would make this a lot easier." So now I'm going to go synthetically divide again. This time with -1. And 1, 2, 7, 6. And then can I factor that? I don't think we can factor it. I think we can quadratic. So I got all positives. And the only way I can simplify that is to be -1 plus or minus I√23/2. But then don't forget your +1, don't forget your -1. All right, that's it. We got about 10 more minutes left in class. I want you to start on the homework for tonight. It's only 3 problems, but some of them are like this, takes a little bit of time. And I will tell you the last one will need 2 PRRs. The last problem on your homework will use 2 PRRs. But I decided to be quiet now. I'm happy to help you on homework. You're welcome to work by yourself. Welcome to work with me. Joey, question.
I think I just found it crazy short.
Okay, give me a second. I'll confirm it. Amelia.
It's a billionaire.
Oh, you want me to come to you?
No,
Okay, look.
I realized.